On Wednesday, South Koreans head to the polls to elect city mayors, governors, and lawmakers. Political parties are ramping up campaign efforts to woo voters. Monkeypox is spreading in more countries around the world. South Korea's disease control authorities gave the lowest risk level for the virus. Wildfire breaks out on a hill in Miryang. It's proving to be difficult to contain the blaze due to dry weather and strong winds. Hello and welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che here to bring the latest. Let's begin with our top story. Here in the nation, candidates for the June 1st local elections are on a last-minute push to win voters, with campaigning only allowed until midnight. The People Power Party asked for support so the ruling bloc can better implement its agenda. The main opposition DP emphasized the role as a force to keep the new administration in check. Kim Do-yeon starts us off.
On Tuesday, the last day of official campaigning, South Korea's two major parties made sure voters across the nation heard their message, especially in the areas where they needed a strong push. Early in the morning, the People Power Party held a major rally in the country's most populous province, Gyeonggi-do. This was the party's last major rally, and it was attended by most of its leadership in support of gubernatorial candidate Kim Eun-hye. Recent polls have had Kim Eun-hye behind her rival Kim Dong-yeon of the Democratic Party of Korea, but within the margin of error. And in the presidential election in March, voters in Gyeonggi-do here chose the DP's Lee Jae-myung, their former governor. One advantage the PPP has in this race, though, is its ability to get things done as a ruling party.
A win by Kim Eun-hye, who is favored and trusted by President Yoon, could enable the central government and Gyeonggi-do to work together and make Gyeonggi-do a special autonomous province.
The leadership dispersed after this rally to support other candidates across the country. PPP chairman Lee Jun-seok led the election campaign's finale in Seoul. The capital was also the site of the last rally by the Democratic Party, but theirs was bigger. The party's leadership were all there in support of their mayoral candidate Song Young-gil. Song's hoping to unseat the incumbent Oh Se-hoon, who's leading by a large margin according to recent polls. Seoul voters also favor the PPP in the presidential election in March. This seat is a crucial position as Seoul mayor gets a seat at the weekly presidential cabinet meetings.
At the moment, we need a responsible opposition party that will contain the new reckless president and make sure he doesn't go off course. You know that party is the Democratic Party of Korea.
The DP leadership have been together all day, stopping first in the country's administrative capital, Sejong, then Daejeon, to support candidates there who are hoping to retain the positions under DP control. Currently, the People Power Party holds the executive branch, while the legislature is held by the Democratic Party within an overwhelming majority. So who wins control of local governments could be a tipping point for the country's political direction. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
In South Korea's local elections, the party that earns more of the 17 mayoral and provincial governor posts is usually declared the overall winner. But this time, there may be other keys to victory. The race is also seen as a spin-off of the presidential election. Lee Kyung-eun explains further.
Of the 17 positions up for grabs, the ruling People Power Party is targeting for 8 or 9. It will be a dramatic scale-up from the current 2. It is expecting solid victories in 5 conservative strongholds in the southeast and Seoul, and 3 likely wins in Chungcheong-do and Gangwon-do provinces. On the back of the PPP's and President Yoon's rising approval ratings, the party says the overall elections are in its favor. The Democratic Party, in the meantime, is expecting 4 solid wins, 3 in liberal strongholds in the southwest and Jeju, while hoping for 1 or 2 extra wins. And those should come from 4 main battleground regions, including Sejong, Daejeon, and Incheon, all of which are seeing the incumbent liberal mayors trying to keep their posts against the PPP candidates. But the biggest focus is on Gyeonggi-do Province. Yoon's former spokesperson Kim Eun-hye is neck and neck with Kim Dong-yeon, who was the campaign merger partner of Yoon's main election rival Lee Jae-myung. And the consensus is the party that wins Gyeonggi-do Province wins the election as a whole.
Of course, Gyeonggi-do is important for accounting for 1/4 of all voters. But the candidates are making the race there a spin-off of their presidential election, which saw the slimmest margin ever. That's why both parties are dying to win this.
For the same reason, there's extra focus on parliamentary by-elections where former presidential candidates are participating, including Incheon's Gyeonggi district with the DP's Lee Jae-myung and in Bundang A district PPP's An Cheol-soo. The outcome of the two parliamentary races and 5 others won't really affect the current landscape of the National Assembly, where the DP holds more than the majority. But analysts believe they could impact the country's overall political climate, as well as the general election coming up in 2 years. 이경은, Arirang News.
Staying with the 8th local and by-elections, Koreans will head to the polls from as early as 6 a.m. Wednesday to pick their mayors, governors, and for some, lawmakers. Kim Dami has the details on the process.
Now, almost 3 months after the presidential election, South Koreans are going to the polls again, this time to elect mayors, governors, local councils, and to fill several vacant seats in the National Assembly. The elections are for the mayors, governors, and councils of all 17 of the country's metropolitan cities and provinces, as well as all 2,602 district councils and their chairpersons. Also up for grabs are 7 seats in the National Assembly. That means voters will have 2 ballots, the first 3 pages long, to choose their local education superintendent, their mayor or provincial governor, and the chair of their local district. Then they'll get a second 4-page ballot. But voters in Sejong City and Jeju Island will vote all at once. Voting hours are 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the 14,465 polling centers nationwide. Identification cards and masks are, of course, a must. People infected with COVID-19 and those in quarantine can vote between 6:30 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. Some foreign nationals who've held a permanent residency for at least 3 years are also eligible to vote. 1 out of 5 eligible voters have already cast their ballots in the 2 days of early voting last week, which is the highest turnout on record for early voting in a local election. And now that people as young as 18 can vote, there's a great deal of unpredictability and anticipation in what Koreans will decide for the country's next 4 years. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol visited Busan for National Oceans Day and vowed to build a new maritime powerhouse. The South Korean leader's trip to the port city also focused on pledging full support in the bid to host the World Expo 2030. Yoon Jung-min shares with us his remarks.
South Korea as a new maritime powerhouse based on stable shipping supply chains and advanced infrastructure technology. That's what the new president, now 3 weeks into his term, pledged to do as he marked the 27th National Oceans Day in the nation's southeastern port city of Busan on Tuesday. Noting the unprecedented challenges in maritime and fishing industries posed by aging population in fishing villages, growing competition in international trade, and the pursuit of maritime hegemony between South Korea's neighboring countries, the president pointed to smart digitalization.
빅데이터, AI, 자동 제어 기술 등을 통해 물류 흐름을 예측하고 최적화해 나가는 디지털 물류로의 전환은 4차 산업혁명 시대에 필수적입니다. 정부는 스마트 해운 물류 산업에 민간 투자도 활발히 이루어질 수 있도록 불필요한 규제를 완화해서 투자가 촉진될 수 있도록 하겠습니다.
Later in the day, Yoon vowed to keep his pledge to make Busan a key hub for the nation's economic development and to channel all efforts to win the country's bid to host the 2030 World Expo in South Korea's second largest city. A civil committee led by SK Group Chairman Choi Tae-won was also officially launched to support Busan's bid.
유치지원민간위원회가 관계부처와 힘을 합쳐 적극적인 유치 교섭 활동을 펼쳐주시기를 당부드립니다. 정부의 교섭 사절단 구성과 파견 계획을 조속히 마련해야 합니다. 필요하다면 대통령 특사 파견도 검토하겠습니다.
A number of South Korean conglomerates, including Samsung, Hyundai, LG, and Lotte, are taking part in the effort as well. Yoon, Arirang News.
South Korea and Japan held talks to decide the best time for Seoul's top diplomat to visit Tokyo. Japan's top envoy Yoshimasa Hayashi visited Korea to attend President Yoon's inauguration ceremony. There he asked for the two countries to quickly re-engage in diplomacy, as such activities have been stalled due to historical issues and disputes related to it, such as on Tuesday, Japan lodging a protest over South Korea conducting a maritime survey in waters off Dokdo. According to Seoul's foreign minister, no specific date has been brought to the table yet. Monkeypox has spread to more than 20 countries where it's not endemic. South Korea has now given the disease the lowest risk level for now. Though the nation have no cases yet, the decision was made in a KDCA meeting. Authorities believe monkeypox poses a moderate risk to certain people, but it's low risk to the general public. The WHO also assessed the risk globally as moderate. South Korea will review plans on designating monkeypox legally as an infectious disease, a move that would enable the government to take charge of relevant prevention measures. With local COVID-19 cases continuing to decline, South Korea will be closing down more treatment centers and screening clinics. They're also easing some of the rules for people arriving in the country when it comes to testing. Song Yoo-jin has the latest.
With the number of COVID-19 cases declining in South Korea, some virus protocols are set to change from June. Starting Wednesday, most community treatment centers in the country will no longer be in use. The health ministry said that it will close down 12 residential treatment centers, which have been caring for those with mild COVID-19 symptoms. However, one center used to treat inbound short-term foreign visitors will remain open. Authorities will prepare additional quarantine facilities and sickbeds if the virus tally climbs back up. At the same time, the operation of the remaining 78 temporary screening clinics will also end. Those who wish to get tested should now visit public health centers. And ahead of the summer travel season, authorities are easing travel restrictions too. Also from Wednesday, those under 12 years old no longer need to quarantine if they travel with a fully vaccinated adult. Fully vaccinated refers to those who have a departure date 15 to 180 days after getting the second shot of a two-shot regimen or have had a booster. Currently, this rule only applies to children under 6. In terms of testing, visitors are only required to submit PCR test results within 3 days of arrival. A rapid antigen test is just recommended on day 6 or 7. Right now, both tests are mandatory. Health officials will also work to provide more in-person treatment to those who've tested positive for COVID-19 by increasing the number of ambulatory care centers. Meanwhile, South Korea reported 17,191 new COVID-19 infections on Tuesday. That's almost 3 times the tally reported the day before, due to more people getting tested after the weekend. There were 9 related deaths and 180 critically ill patients. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea reported 34 Omicron subvariant cases. 28 of them are BA.2.12.1, which authorities are calling the most concerning strain because it's believed to be around 20% more transmissible than stealth Omicron. However, it poses little risk in terms of severity. The total number of cases of this strain has now risen to 60. The other 6 subvariant cases are the BA.5 and BA.4, both of which have been spreading in South Africa and are also considered more transmissible. North Korea reported around 96,000 new COVID-19 cases, or fever as the regime's been calling it. That's almost 5,000 fewer than the day before. No new deaths were reported, but South Korea's Unification Ministry is concerned the spread of the virus, coupled with the drop in goods entering the reclusive state, will worsen its chronic food shortage. Pyongyang has still not responded to Seoul's offer of talks on sending aid. Back here in Indonesia, a wildfire has broke out on a hill in Miryang. Due to dry weather and strong winds, the blaze still hasn't been contained. Authorities raised its wildfire response level to the highest and evacuated hundreds of residents in nearby villages. Yoon reports.
A wildfire that broke out early on Tuesday in the city of Miryang, Gyeongsangnam-do Province still hasn't been contained. South Korean authorities have raised the response level to the highest, level 3, usually issued when a fire has scorched over 100 hectares of land. Over 470 residents have been evacuated from the nearby area. This comes just 2 days after a fire was put out in Ulsan County in neighboring Gyeongsangnam-do Province. This fire in Miryang started on a hill in the Pubungmyeon area of the city. Due to the dry weather and strong winds, it has spread over 6 kilometers and blazed through more than 180 hectares of land. As of Tuesday evening, no casualties or deaths have been reported. Stopping the fire from spreading to nearby houses and facilities has been the top priority requested by President Yoon Suk-yeol. And authorities are hopeful that the blaze can be contained before the end of the day.
Based on what we're seeing up in our helicopters and on land, we think we can contain the big flames by sundown. But if we continue to see strong winds, this may be difficult. The Korea Meteorological Administration expected winds to slow down later in the afternoon.
More than 40 firefighting helicopters carrying 1,500 personnel have been dispatched to the scene since this morning. Some 400 prisoners located 600 to 700 meters away from where the fire first broke out have also been evacuated. Yoon, Arirang News.
April data shows a decline across the board: industrial production, consumer spending, and corporate investment. That hasn't happened here in Korea since before the pandemic officially began in March 2020. Jeong helps us look beyond the digits.
In April, South Korea's overall industrial production, spending, and investment all dropped for the first time in more than 2 years. Data from Statistics Korea on Tuesday shows the index for the country's industrial output stood at 116.4, down 0.7% from the previous month. The agency attributed the fall in production to the manufacturing sector.
Overall production turned downward, with the mining and manufacturing sector seeing a drop of 3.3% on month. It was led by a fall in semiconductor and food production.
On the other hand, service industry output rose by nearly 1.5% in April compared to the month earlier. With the lifting of social distancing measures, the restaurants and lodging sector saw output jump by more than 11%. However, the retail sales, a barometer for consumer spending, edged down by 0.2% on month. But this was mainly due to lower demand for medicine and medical supplies as the number of Omicron patients fell after its peak in March. Statistics Korea said with the sluggish figures, economic uncertainties have increased.
Spending, retail sales, and investment in equipment were all sluggish. We can see that the economic recovery slowed down last month.
The agency added that corporate investment in equipment decreased by 7.5% on month, dropping for the third straight month. It said investment is being delayed amid a rise in commodity prices and global supply disruption. One expert suggests the government should reduce tax in order to help boost the economy.
How about reducing the value-added tax? Now the value-added tax is about 10%. If that 10% of value-added tax is cut in half to 5%, then that's going to decrease inflation by almost 5%. And as the price has come down due to lower value-added taxes, we could expect increased consumption in terms of the quantity. So if you reduce value-added taxes, then we could expect less inflation on the one hand, and higher economic activity like consumption and investment.
Jeong, Arirang News.
The number of South Koreans who traveled overseas in April was at over 215,000, more than threefold from a year ago. The KTO cited the government's exemption of self-quarantine policy for inbound travelers in March as a primary factor. While the number of overseas trips hasn't fully recovered to pre-pandemic levels, data shows outbound trips growing for 3 straight months. As for foreign travelers visiting the nation in that same period, the figures were also jumped up over 80% on year. In May, countries using the euro saw its highest ever rate of inflation at 8.1%. That's according to the EU statistics agency Eurostat on Tuesday. This was up from the April record high of 7.4%. Eurostat attributes the soaring prices to the prolonged war in Ukraine, which has pushed up the cost of energy and food. Energy prices in May spiked 39.2%, while food prices went up by 7.5%. South Korea will resume military reservist training in June. For years, related activities were halted due to the pandemic. The new sessions will be more high-tech, even using VR battlefields. Gyeonggi provides a glimpse of what to expect.
For around 6 years after completing their mandatory military service, all South Korean men are required to go through a training session as reservists once a year. The pandemic put a stop to this training for more than 2 years, but it will resume from next month. And this training center in Seoul is fully prepared to welcome the reservists back.
We have limited the amount of trainees to 70% as part of COVID-19 preventive measures and to provide more effective training.
It has also brought in virtual reality to train soldiers. Using a simulated gun designed to deliver a realistic recoil, the trainees can feel as if they're fighting in a real battle.
As you can see, this training facility has giant VR battlefields, each made up of 3 screens. To make it feel more realistic, this vest has 9 sensors that vibrate, allowing the trainees to actually feel like they're being attacked during the virtual combat.
The soldiers are also trained to fire real guns during the training session. To protect their hearing, this center uses a special type of headset that blocks the sound of gunfire. The headset blocks loud noises above 80 decibels, but lets in sounds quieter than that, so that the trainees can still hear other people talking to them. A total of 16 training centers like this are spread across South Korea. The country plans to create more and have 40 of them within the next 2 years. Peunji, Arirang News.
A South Korean Navy fleet travels to Hawaii to join the world's largest international maritime training drill, known as the Rim of the Pacific exercise. The team left its base in Jeju on Tuesday. Around 1,000 South Korean troops will take part using vessels including the 14,500-ton carrier ROKS Marado and the 1,800-ton submarine the Shindol-seok. Seoul has been taking part since 1990, but this is the first time the country is sending vessels of that size. The Rim of the Pacific exercise takes place every 2 years, led by the U.S. 26 countries, including Australia, Canada, and Japan, are taking part in this year's drills that runs from late June to early August.
Daytime heat will make a return for local election day tomorrow. Under blazing sunshine, maximum temperatures will be hiking up to 28 degrees Celsius in Seoul, and southern parts of the country will be sweltering with highs surpassing 30 degrees. Keep in mind that the rise in daytime readings will create big contrasts in temperatures of 10 to 20 degrees Celsius. Parts of eastern regions are under dry weather advisories. For Gyeonggi-do Province, gusty offshore winds of 15 meters per second are in the forecast. The combination of strong winds and dry air and warm temperatures will increase the risk of wildfires. A big fire broke out earlier today in Miryang in Gyeongsangnam-do Province. Please be careful with anything that can spark a fire. Morning lows will range from 13 to 19 degrees Celsius nationwide. Seoul will be kicking off at 16 degrees. And sunshine will make a return for the daytime. Daejeon will get up to 31 degrees, Gyeongju 34, and Jeju will hit 27 degrees. A similar weather pattern of partly cloudy skies with wide temperature gaps is expected for the remainder of this week. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
Time to wrap things up. As always, thank you for staying with us.